Donkey Kong. Look at this guy. Everyone knows him, probably even your Meemaw. This guy is one of Nintendo's biggest names, but did you know that he has a pretty rocky track record? That big ape certainly has some fantastic games under his belt. The original arcade game, the Donkey Kong Country series, Donkey Kong 64, and even most recently, Donkey Kong Bonanza. But right there in the middle of his timeline, there's a really weird period where Nintendo just didn't know what they were doing, making weird or just straight up bad games. And this period is what we're gonna talk about. But first, a little history. In the early 1980s, Nintendo took the hardware from a failed arcade game and reworked it into a new one, Donkey Kong, which saw insane and immediate success, becoming one of the top-grossing arcade games in both 1981 and 82. It was quickly followed up by Donkey Kong Jr. a year later, and Donkey Kong 3 the year after that, but neither of these sequels came close to the success of the original. Now this was technically DK's first rough period. Aside from different ports and cameos in other games, it was pretty slim pickings for the series as a whole. We really only got Donkey Kong Jr. Math for the NES, and a successor to the original Donkey Kong on Game Boy, which is admittedly fantastic. But then entered the Super Nintendo era, and this is where everything changed. The British game developer Rare impressed Nintendo with their ability to use pre-rendered 3D graphics to really up the visuals on the Super Nintendo's limited hardware. And so the two entered a partnership where Rare was tasked with creating a brand new Donkey Kong game, which ultimately turned into Donkey Kong Country. This game is truly where the idea of modern Donkey Kong was born. DK's new design, introducing the wider Kong family, the villain of King K. Rool, it all came from here. Then we got 2 whole sequels to this game, offering us new characters and expanding on the lore of the Kongs, and 3 companion titles in Donkey Kong Land, which answered the question of what if Donkey Kong Country had only 3 colors? Entering the Nintendo 64 era, Rare continued to deliver. They brought their own flair to the kart racing genre by giving us Diddy Kong Racing, which is to this day considered one of the greatest kart racers of all time. And there's Donkey Kong 64, which also released. Okay, as much grief as this game gets with how bloated it is, it's still genuinely a good platformer that brought DK into the 3rd dimension. It was safe to say that Rare was just the go-to Donkey Kong studio. And during all this, they were also cooking up game after game after game, separate from Nintendo's IPs. They were just in their prime in the 90s. While Nintendo owned a 49% stake in them, it felt like it was just a matter of time before they officially brought them into the fold, and nothing bad would ever happen. In 2002, Microsoft purchased Rare, leaving the gaming world baffled. Rare was basically synonymous with Nintendo, but now they're a part of Microsoft? This left Nintendo in a rough spot with regards to Donkey Kong. Their Donkey Kong guys suddenly couldn't make any more Donkey Kong games. This also left Rare in a weird state as well. Most of their ongoing projects revolved around Donkey Kong, so they needed to completely rework or straight up abandon them. I'm sure Nintendo was scrambling to figure out what to do with DK without Rare. Suddenly they had 0 Donkey Kong games in the pipeline because their Donkey Kong people are gone. So in the meantime, they just remade games with Rare. Yeah, despite Microsoft clawing them away, they were still totally fine with Rare working with Nintendo on handheld games, since they didn't have any kind of competing handheld. So in 2003, Nintendo released Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, just 3 years after releasing Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Color. And if you consider Donkey Kong Land a sort of port of Donkey Kong Country, that's 3 times that they re-released Donkey Kong Country on a handheld in under a decade. This was naturally followed up by Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3 over the next couple of years, which surely bought them enough time to cook up an all-new Donkey Kong experience, faithful to the foundation that Rare established and without any kind of weird peripheral involved at all. This is absolutely the beginning of the "what are we doing" period in the Donkey Kong history textbook. I mean, if you're breaking the emergency glass on a rhythm game, you're clearly in the trenches. But this one had a special gimmick, the DK bongos. Now, to be fair, Donkey Kong wasn't completely detached from music. Every character in Donkey Kong 64 had their own special musical instrument attack, and Donkey Kong's instrument was the bongos. But I don't see that and immediately think, free bird! But Nintendo did, I guess. And if they were dead set on going down this path, at least they went to one of the best to get it done, Namco. Specifically the team that created the Taiko no Tatsujin series, another drum-based rhythm game. So despite the very strange premise, they were giving a little bit of a shit. The bongos have 4 possible inputs that get translated into the game. Hitting the left bongo, hitting the right bongo, hitting both at the same time, and clapping. And let me tell you, I have never felt more like a jackass to my neighbors than when using this controller. It's a little impressive the range this game can offer though. Lowest difficulties cater to the baby's first rhythm game crowd, but upping the difficulty can actually provide a decent level of challenge. Like moving your arms from the drums to clapping and then back to the drums is sometimes too much for my puny little arms to do. But now, let's triple it and give it to the next person, and then double it and give it to the next person, and add one more. Not only did this become a series with multiple entries, each region that got it received a song list more tailored to them, whether it be for licensing and copyright reasons, or just what type of music the region might prefer. Both Donkey Konga 1 and 2 saw releases in Japan, North America, and Europe, and then Donkey Konga 3 was a Japan-only release. But the song lists are just so strange. While Japan got a cool list filled with J-pop and anime openings, North America got... Alright, I'm sure every region had some bangers and some flops, just to cater to a wide audience, but the fact that they even made separate versions in the first place is kinda more effort than I would have expected. They were clearly just treading water on the DK series, and once the groundwork for rhythm games developed, you can create new charts for new songs very quickly and just really churn them out. It just feels like such whiplash. Absolutely nothing about Donkey Kong screams rhythm game to me, but I guess this was Nintendo's peripheral era. Yeah, I'm talking about you. And hey, if you ever wanted to hear Mambo No. 5 with Donkey Kong literally saying the words Donkey Konga on top of the song, what the hell's your problem? Today's video is sponsored by VITURE and the Beast XR glasses. What if instead of playing Donkey Kong on a screen, you could beam it straight into your eyes? Well, now that's possible with the Beast XR glasses. With VITURE's new glasses, you can take the basic screen on your phone or laptop and immediately turn it into a giant multi-window display right in front of your eyes. With the 58-degree field of view and Sony's latest micro OLED panel, it's like having a 174-inch screen just in front of you. The 3 degrees of freedom let you pin the screen to stay where it is, keep it at a fixed position, or have it smoothly follow your eyes. And you can reduce transparency so you can still see the world around you without banging into walls. And you can get prescription lenses if you need those, like me. Now this is great for productivity and all, but what about Mario? Well, thanks to the Pro Mobile Dock, you can connect your Switch and Switch 2, or any HDMI device really, and suddenly play Mario Kart at a huge scale right on your wall. I tend to get motion sick with standard VR headsets, but with this one I used it with absolutely no problem, and it's just genuinely cool. Grab yourself a pair by using my code Aaronitmar for 10% off everything. Don't just look at Mario, absorb him directly through your retinas. Thank you to VITURE for sponsoring today's video. While the Konga series received annual releases from 2003 to 2005, they weren't the only games benefiting from the bongo controller. 2004 saw the release of Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, a full-sized platforming game wholly designed around the DK bongos as a way to counter how complicated modern games were becoming. And shockingly, they kinda delivered. This is indeed a whole platformer that you can play with these stupid-ass drums. Controlling Donkey Kong is as simple as hitting the left or right drum to make him move in that respective direction. Hitting both drums causes Donkey Kong to jump, and clapping activates the sound wave attack, which collects enraged bananas and can also stun enemies. The game is incredibly linear. From the menu, you select a kingdom. Each kingdom is divided into 3 levels, 2 that are actual platforming levels, with the 3rd being the boss. When you complete a kingdom, your bananas will be counted and you'll receive crests based on how many you finished with, and these crests are used to unlock future kingdoms. Even though they designed this game to be really easy for anyone to control, they didn't skimp with quality and variety. You've got vine swinging, animal buddies, fighting gigantic bosses, but the controls really just they mess with you. For starters, the bongos have such a weird level of consistency. There are times where everything goes perfectly, and I find myself accidentally having fun. But then other times, it's like the game's fighting me on how much I'm hitting the bongos to get Donkey Kong to move. So I just barely miss a jump or mistime something, and it doesn't really feel like I did anything wrong. The clap detection is also really odd. Sometimes the microphone is so sensitive that just a tiny noise in the room, or even the sound of hitting the bongos, will be detected as a clap. And other times, it just pretends it didn't hear my clap at all. But the developers definitely had this freak in mind when they were designing this game. Not to say that these are levels that play themselves, but they definitely designed them with the idea that you have such limited movement. Things like launch pads or flower stems or these little monkeys will send you flying exactly where you need to go. It's just up to you to react to what you're headed for. A lot of these levels were so well planned that the game actually has a whole combo system. Performing actions one after another without touching the ground will rack up your combo, and the higher your combo, the more bananas you've collected during that combo will be multiplied. The sound wave attack is crucial for this, because groups of bananas collected using the attack will also be multiplied. So if you're skilled enough and the level sets you up well, you can avoid the ground as often as possible, use the clap for every possible banana, and just collect an ungodly horde of them. The game even gives you hint movies that literally show you ways to keep your combo going. Every level wasn't designed perfectly though. For example, I hated playing any of the water levels. You really need more than left and right controls for swimming underwater, so I was constantly tripping over myself or having to make adjustments for swimming in a direction I didn't want, and it was just really frustrating. And the boss fights are fine. They couldn't really make bosses that were too complicated considering your limited controls, so they boiled down into either very easy pattern recognition or just avoiding an attack and then countering when you have the chance. But there isn't a single Kremling found anywhere in the game. None of the little guys, there's no King K. Rool. Instead, we have these random Kongs that we've never seen before and we've never seen since. Smash doesn't count. And I have no idea why we needed to have Donkey Kong in the corner for the entire game. I never felt like seeing him that close added anything to the gameplay.
Is this improving your gaming experience?
I just wish I could control Donkey Kong like a normal human with a controller. Oh, I can? Well, that just makes this game kind of worse. You're caught between a rock and a hard place on this one. The DK bongos are annoying and noisy and make you feel so stupid, but playing this game with a regular controller is just so boring. It really was designed with the bongos in mind, so you'd better apologize to your neighbors if you play this after 9 p.m.
Or you've got a secret third option. Play it on the Wii.
In 2008 and 2009, Nintendo re-released a small line of GameCube games on the Wii under the label New Play Control. These games all received a variety of changes, such as widescreen support and new features, but the biggest addition was motion control, and Donkey Kong Jungle Beat was one of the 7 titles that Nintendo updated. Jungle Beat for Wii no longer supports the DK bongos, and instead can only be played with the Wii Remote and Nunchuck. Donkey Kong is controlled with the analog stick! Jumping is now done using the A button, and clapping received the biggest change. Instead of being a circular attack that surrounds DK, the sound wave attack is now directional. By shaking the Wii Remote and holding a direction with the analog stick, the attack direction can be changed. The clap also no longer collects bananas in a combo. Instead, pressing the A button a second time while in the air accomplishes this. To be honest, I'm a little torn on the original versus New Play Control. On the one hand, it actually provides normal controller gameplay without making it doo-doo easy. But using the analog stick for both movement and directing the clap feels like the two mechanics are kind of fighting. You might be running to the right, but then want to clap at something to the left, which means Donkey Kong will also go to the left a little bit. It's just not all that fluid. Whereas on the original, yeah, you're clapping your hands like an ass, but your clap doesn't stop you or alter your movement really. I don't know that I could say one version of this game is really better than the other. The GameCube version has the downside of waking up the whole neighborhood, but it also feels like a better fit with the bongos, like you can really tell the game was designed around them. The Wii version is also fine, you're almost getting the full experience, but it still feels like you're missing a little something. Neither version really feels like a proper Donkey Kong game though. But maybe Nintendo was having much better luck over on the Game Boy Advance. While Nintendo was cooking up the bongo games on the GameCube, they were also developing a brand new Donkey Kong adventure for the Game Boy Advance, and in 2005, they finally released it, DK King of Swing. Surely they've had time to recover from the loss of Rare, they assembled a solid team with a great idea, and it's time to usher in a brand new era of Donkey Kong. God, I wish I was in that timeline. DK King of Swing is a really weird puzzle platformer. DK can exclusively move around a level by spinning around on pegs, and that's the game! It was originally developed by an employee at Payon, who came up with the gameplay and intended for it to be an original character. After pitching it to Nintendo, they suggested that Donkey Kong would mesh well with his gameplay, and it would give the game wider appeal than an original character would. You hold down the L or R button on the Game Boy Advance to make DK grab with the corresponding arm, oftentimes alternating these two as DK pivots in order to move around. You can also use the momentum of spinning to launch DK through the air, letting you move a little faster, but at the risk of missing and falling to your death. You can hold down both L and R to blast DK forward as an attack, and there's also the Going Bananas mode, which improves his movement and gives him invincibility at the cost of 20 bananas. In the game's adventure mode, King K. Rool steals a bunch of medals, which is apparently a tragedy to Donkey Kong Island. I mean, these medals aren't magic. I don't know why K. Rool stole them in the first place, and I have no idea why we need to go through all of this effort to get them back. You travel through 5 worlds, defeating a boss at the end of each, and ultimately take on King K. Rool at the end of the game. Man, this game really did not tickle my cup of tea. Restricting my movement like this after I've spent the last decade freely running around as Donkey Kong just feels so stupid. At best, it's just boring. Like the entire time, I wish I could just go walk, or even just more elegantly swing around. And at worst, it's frustrating as hell. There's this one level at the end of the game where pegs are moving up and down in an alternating pattern, so you have to try to grab them while they're moving, and it just doesn't work. Obviously, flying towards them is a real risk, so I get that. But even going so carefully, one by one, it's like I'm not pressing the button at all. They also included a multiplayer mode for use with the link cable. And I just gotta say, if you invite me over to your house to play the DK King of Swing Jungle Jam mode, I'm gonna kick your ass. But fortunately, this game was just a one-off. We don't have to play it anymore, and we'll definitely only be playing it on a single screen. I am fully convinced that there is a single person at Nintendo who just loved King of Swing and would not stop pestering his boss for a sequel until he finally got it. DK Jungle Climber for Nintendo DS. This time, King K. Rool has stolen the crystal banana from a banana alien named Zanana from the planet Plantain. And I guess all banana-related crimes fall under Donkey Kong's jurisdiction, because there he goes to save the day. The gameplay in this one is exactly like in King of Swing. You swing from peg to peg, and you can use the momentum to launch yourself. You can now press the A button to automatically do a charge jump, which serves as both an immediate jump and an attack, which is much better than the first game where you had to hold 2 pegs and manually charge up your jump. I think the grab detection on the pegs is also a bit better. I found myself missing pegs way less than the first time around. Or maybe I just got better at the game, which is an embarrassing thing to say out loud. This time, Donkey Kong can be joined by Diddy Kong, who rides on his back. You can double press A when you have Diddy Kong to do a charge jump to blast him forward as a more ranged attack, which is pretty nice. The inclusion of Diddy also brings some more unique items. There's a big ol' hammer that Diddy can swing around to destroy everything in its range, a set of wings that the pair can use together to fly, and a torch used for melting ice. Diddy Kong can also be thrown to other levels separate from DK, and you can use this to progress through some puzzles. I think the bosses are a bit better this time, but you hit a point where they are just ridiculously hard. This game has no health system. It plays more like the country games where Diddy serves as your first hit, and if you take another hit, you die. And this is brutal in some of these boss fights. You basically need to do everything perfectly, only allowing room for one single error in a game where the movement is not always in your control. King of Swing let you spend bananas in order to regain health, and I have no idea why they got rid of that system here, but it is so much worse, especially in the final boss fight against King K. Rool. I just got nothing more to say on this one. I guess they do some interesting things with the dual screens. There's one section where both screens show different sets of pegs, and you can only progress by grabbing ones that are on both screens. I'm just absolutely gobsmacked that this gameplay got not 1, but 2 games, like Nintendo's pranking me. During this period, there were quite a few games that sort of involved Donkey Kong, but I wouldn't really call them Donkey Kong games either. The Mario vs. Donkey Kong series was born, a sort of spiritual successor to the original Donkey Kong gameplay, but now with puzzle elements. While Donkey Kong is there, it would be pretty generous to call this a Donkey Kong game. Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64 also saw a remake on the Nintendo DS. This was yet another handheld remake that Microsoft allowed Rare to work on, though characters like Banjo and Conker were replaced with Dixie and Tiny Kong. But this is definitely in the same category as the Game Boy Advance ports of the country games, though admittedly this is much higher effort work than those are. But this dark era reached its lowest point with one game. Donkey Kong Barrel Blast, developed by Payon, the very same developers of DK King of Swing and Jungle Climber. I mean, who doesn't look at this gameplay and think they're a perfect match for a racing game? Barrel Blast started out as a GameCube title named DK Bongo Blast, a racing game specifically designed around the DK bongos. These things would just not go away. But this was at the tail end of the GameCube's life, and the Nintendo Wii was nearly upon us, so the game was reworked into a Wii game, releasing in 2007. Okay, more like escaping. Becoming a Wii game, Barrel Blast naturally takes advantage of motion controls, but you'd think the bongo controls would still be compatible. I mean, plenty of Wii games still support the GameCube controller, the bongos are in essence a GameCube controller, and the game was literally already programmed to use the bongos in the first place, But no, that functionality was completely removed in favor of the motion controls, which just simulate the bongo inputs in the first place. I mean, either way the controls would have been so stupid, but at least they have like a certain charm to them if you're using the bongos. It just seems so weird to take away the bongo controls when the game was designed around them. Sure, add the motion controls in, but like, keep the bongo controls too. To accelerate, you alternate shaking the Wii Remote and Nunchuck until you hit max speed. Then you only need to worry about shifting lanes, which you do by shaking either left or right. You can also jump by shaking both simultaneously, and you have a punch button and items to use as well. But the game has a really hard time detecting when you're inputting a jump or acceleration. So oftentimes when I'm trying to get back up to speed, I end up jumping in the air and looking like a fool. And I don't know if it's just my old man bones creaking, but playing this game genuinely made me sore. Like, you have to shake so much in such a repetitive way. It's the only time those take a break screens would actually make sense. The character selection is fairly varied. It follows a Kongs vs. Kremlings theme, which may have been borrowed from the scrapped Diddy Kong pilot, which had the exact same roster theme. While the Kongs are all pre-existing characters, about half the Kremlings are completely invented just for this game, which I honestly think is pretty cool, even though we've never seen them ever again. Smash still doesn't count. Also, this was the last time Donkey Kong was playable before he died or whatever happened to him. God, this game sucks. I mean, okay, it's not egregious, I just actively feel myself not having fun while playing it. Items feel like they do nothing, with most of them just taking away bananas from your inventory. There's hardly any track variety, you literally ride on rails with no real driving freedom, and my arms hurt the entire time. Truly, the only time I can feel myself having fun is when performing a wild charge. Collecting 50 bananas gives you the ability to perform a wild charge, which can be activated by holding down on the analog stick and then letting go to blast forward. Not only does this give you a huge boost of speed, but you have the ability to combo through things. Hitting barrels, enemies, or other racers will prolong your boost, and you can chain these together and boost for a really long time. But if you hit an obstacle or a steel barrel, which are all over the place, your wild charge is cancelled and your sense of fun comes crashing back down to earth. I can really see why this is considered the worst Donkey Kong game. It's really not that engaging as a racing game, and when you compare it to Mario Kart Wii, it's just night and day. Motion controls that give you osteoporosis, items that don't feel like they're doing much of anything, and you can't even suffer with your friends online. You have to be the guy to invite your friends over to your house to physically play couch co-op Donkey Kong Barrel Blast. Sincerely, I think the only positive this game brought is that it's probably the reason Funky Kong is in Mario Kart Wii, because his model was already made and they could just plop him right in. And then he would go on to be the Mario Kart Wii character. So if you're a fan of Mario Kart Wii and Funky Kong, you better thank this god-awful garbage. It wasn't until Donkey Kong Country Returns, released in 2010, that we finally returned to form and had a proper Donkey Kong game. But the weird thing is, these good Donkey Kong games are still so rare. Since 2010, we've only had 3. Donkey Kong Country Returns, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, and Donkey Kong Bonanza. And while these are all such incredible games, the wait time for them is absolutely brutal. Half the time we just end up getting a Switch re-release in some form. Wait, Nintendo, don't! What have you done?